No doubt, many of you have heard that the mind is a terrible thing to waste. But what if you are your own enemy and you yourself waste your own mind? That's what I'll be talking about today. Something very important, and that is understanding how your mind controls your body and ultimately the decisions that you have to make. 19% of Americans face anxiety, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, and that was reported last year in November. Most of us in here deal with anxiety at some level or another. But do we really deal with that anxiety? Or do we look at it and put it away and prevent ourselves from living our lives? And I think the latter is true, that this anxiety can get the best of us. For example, most people avoid taking a public speaking class. I mean, most people don't say, I want to go up and talk. Well, yet here we are today. However, the Washington Post released an article in 2014 that talked about some of the key phobias that people avoid. Number one was public speaking. That list also included other phobias such as heights. I think we're okay. And then also, if you go down that list, bugs, spiders, snakes. So hopefully some of you are now squirming because some of these anxieties are things that you can relate to. Now, how you address these anxieties and how you deal with them will either make you successful or not so successful. And it may not just be public speaking. If you go down that list to number 8, we have ghosts, zombies, and even being alone. That's not a zombie. But whatever your anxiety is, it's important to understand and at least acknowledge that it's okay to have that talk. I hadn't realized how important it was to acknowledge what anxiety is and how it can affect us until I myself was in a very grave situation. At the age of 22 years old, my most famous person and favorite person in the world, my grandmother, passed away. It was the first death I had to deal with. Now, most of you are thinking, this sounds more like depression versus anxiety. But it really is anxiety. And understanding the difference between the two can help you understand yourself and how to overcome the barriers that come with that. So for me, I was a 22-year-old college student, living life to its fullest, exploring the dynamics of a degree in psychology. And you think I would understand anxiety versus depression. Any psych majors in here? That's why I'm here. Oh, we're on. Thank you. Perfect. No easy task. And so when I was given the information that my grandmother had passed away, I thought my world was over. It wasn't that I was sad and lonely. It was the ability to live my own life without her in my life. And for me, that was huge. In fact, it took 10 years before I could mention her name without crying, because I love that woman so much. So standing here today is showing you all how you can overcome some of your greatest fears and anxieties and to do great things. Fast forward a few years after the notification of her passing, I have made a career out of helping people understand their anxieties and getting over them. And I am so grateful to be here today to share some of those experiences and stories with you. One of the things I wanted to do as an adult was set some goals. And I thought, I lost my grandmother, but she would not want me to stop living. So I created a list of goals. Now the key for goals and goal setting is to make sure that they are obtainable and they're realistic. So I have 4 goals and you're going to see them. Ride a horse, play the piano, travel. Now that's pretty broad. I do that for work all the time. But what does travel mean? Does it mean walking outside by yourself, finding someone to go with you, traveling across the country? The definition is pretty broad, so it's easy for me to obtain. And then finally, help others. And so this is what I decided to make the next 10 years of my life by accomplishing these goals. Identify what it is, make sure it was possible, and then go ahead and actually do it. And so I have the pleasure, and sometimes the pain, of dealing with people who absolutely hate talking. And for me, I have to listen to them and say, it's going to be all right. You can say how you feel. And then they usually give me a 4-letter word. And I said, that's great, let's work with that. But it's that fear or that phobia of saying, I want to talk about this or I need to get over this, that we don't even want to have the discussion about. When I was 22 years old, no one wanted to address the fact that I lost my grandmother. That was a problem for me because I did not know or have the skills to get over that issue or overcome it. And if I'm not getting help and I'm not asking for help, how can I possibly solve that problem? And so some of you are nodding your heads here today because you've been in similar situations where something is unknown and you're afraid to ask for help because of the stigma that's tied to that. So it's really important to have that dialogue and have that conversation. And I think we live in a world where for some of us, it's incredibly challenging just to get up in the morning and look ourselves in the mirror. And that's okay, because the minute you acknowledge that, you can obtain great things. So for me, I thought it'd be really great if I bought a piano. And then it sat there, because that's great, it's going to sit there, I can't play it. And I said, okay, fine, I'll put that on the side. And then in 2008, I said, I'm going to buy a horse. Now you can't just leave a horse there. They have demands, they want to be fed, and that's a lot of mess if you just leave it there for a while. And so in 2008, I learned how to ride. I got lessons, I got a trainer, and I got a bottle of whiskey. And I thought, no matter what happens, good or bad, land or fall, I'm going to do this. And as you can see from the photo, I did it quite well, because I didn't get hurt. That was my definition of well. So goal was checked off, goal accomplished. In 2015, I had the horrible news that I was diagnosed with a brain infection. And I did not know what my outcome or prognosis was going to be. It's 2018, so we're okay. But at the time, I didn't know. And so one of the things I did, I said, that piano, I'm going to play it, I'm going to learn how. So through the powers of patience and YouTube, I went ahead and got a baby grand piano from a keyboard I upgraded, and I learned how to play that. I constantly thank my parents for having the patience to listen to me bang through those poor keys through the first 2 years. But it was that fear of not knowing if I'd be alive tomorrow that pushed me to obtain the goal of learning how to ride and play the piano. And I thought to myself, yeah, this is pretty good, but it's not enough. So then I thought, I need to check off goal number 3, and that is travel. So for the last 3 years, I set a goal. I'm going to travel 1 million miles in 4 years. I'm just under 772,000 miles. Now these are short trips. They could be from here to San Diego or cross country to Florida. In fact, using positive thinking to help overcome that fear of not knowing if I'll be here tomorrow, I ended up in the cockpit of a Boeing 737 plane at MCO International Airport in August of 2017. They didn't let me fly it because I sure did try. And I'm also deathly afraid of heights, so it was really important that I had that picture taken. And in fact, I was so bold to say I have this one opportunity to become successful and overcome this ability to get inside the cockpit that I said, excuse me, pilot, would you mind stepping outside so I can take a picture? The look on his face was priceless. And I said, you don't have to be anxious, I'm not going to actually start it up. That was a joke. Because I did try to start it up, and he said, don't touch that button. Regardless of that, I never thought if you were to ask me in 2002 when my grandmother died that I would be inside the cockpit of the Boeing 737, or that I would have a horse and learn how to ride, or that I'd learn how to play the piano on my own. The power of YouTube, it's not just for watching people fall. And then, this is my grandmother, Janet J. Keefe. So I said that without any tears. It took 10 years in the making to get to that point. And the moral of the story is, if I were to sit back and let the phobia of the unknown get to me, I wouldn't be accomplishing the goals that I'm doing now. I have a wonderful career where I get to meet many different people, and I deal with their anxieties and their phobias for public speaking. Most people are terrified. And 80% of my job is helping them understand that you will be okay, you will get through this, and you'll actually have a somewhat tolerable time. It's not going to be terrifying. And that's what makes my job so much fun. Which leads me to goal number 4, helping others. Not only do I like to help people address their anxiety, but I also like to volunteer and help others give back to the community through volunteer programs, food banks, and other areas. And in all of my endeavors, I like to talk. And I talk to different people, and I meet tons of different people, and I hear their stories. And it's these stories that now motivate me to help plan for the next goals and move forward with the future. Now, I always think back, if I just sat there and gave up in 2002 and said, I'm done, where would I be today? It is the fact that we hear things and we believe them. And that is how powerful our brain is and our mind is. If we let ourselves talk ourselves out of doing something, we're never going to do it. If you look at something and say, that will be uncomfortable, but I can do it and I will do it, you will have a far better time doing it, and you might actually enjoy it. So for the next 10 years of my life, I plan to do as much for others as people give to me. And so I go out and find people and I talk to people. This week alone, I had 7 individuals come to me telling me that they couldn't do various projects, whether it be organizing a speech, researching something, or even having a conversation with an instructor who's giving them a bad grade. Not me. Somebody else. And it's having that conversation that validates those concerns and also lets people know that you can talk about that. It is okay. But how are you going to move forward even though you identify the problem and don't have a solution? And it's that thought process, that plan that helps us overcome some of these terrifying events such as public speaking, heights, snakes, you're on that one, spiders, ghosts, and zombies. All right? And so no matter what your fear is, it's when you get to the level where you worry so much that it becomes something that you avoid or ignore, where you stop living life, that's where the problem comes forward. So many of us have experienced anxiety, and in fact, a third of us in our entire lives will have some sort of anxiety or issue with anxiety. So what I implore all of you to do is when you feel those issues with anxiety, or you don't know if it's anxiety, to talk to somebody. One of the easiest things that we can do, and all of us have the power to use, is our voice. And so I encourage you today to look at yourselves and think, have I experienced anxiety? Has somebody else experienced anxiety? And then address it, one issue at a time, day by day, and you can overcome it. And I think teaching has given me the ability to understand my own internal anxieties, as well as help others get over and overcome their anxieties. Thank you.